We'll close with this email from Mark. Subject line: Andrew is a Luddite. He writes, I was surprised that nobody emailed about the Irish drone episode. That was an awesome interview. However, the idea of ordering coffee delivery raised the question about technology making people more isolated and lonely. Andrew raises this point a lot. Ben usually calls him a Luddite. And while I generally agree with Ben, there is a legitimate critique that removing the quote unquote friction in everyday experiences means removing human interaction that has historically fostered community and connectedness.
I don't know if I can make it through this question because this is such a mischaracterization of my position. 180 degrees opposite. I've been worried and concerned about this and writing about the problems of this situation for years and years before I even knew you. How did I get placed
Here's
in
the thing.
The atomization of society is awesome and you're a loser for saying otherwise. This is the one. This is the one. I read this email and I texted you. I'm like, the first two ones were fine. We had a good joshing back and forth about their characterization of my position. Mark, I don't know if I'm Mark. Jeez.
Here's the thing. The record speaks for itself over the last 2.5 years. You have, in fact, called me a Luddite like dozens of times.
For sure. Yes, that's right. It's a conflation. I'm not denying I call you a Luddite. I'm not denying that you are a Luddite. I'm saying it's distinct from being worried about human interaction.
All right. Well, I'm going to read the way Mark characterizes the problem. A few examples, he writes: DoorDash instead of picking food up from the restaurant, Uber to an airport instead of asking a friend for a ride, hiring a TaskRabbit instead of asking a neighbor for help, or dating apps instead of meeting a spouse through friends or church. There are several lenses you could look at this problem through. There is an unbundling lens, whereby consumers nominally want one thing like food delivery, but we're actually getting a bundled experience with other benefits, including some human interaction, and that those experiences are now being unbundled. Ben recently made a similar point that DeepSeek gave him a good research report, but that a lot of his learnings over the years, there's that learnings word again, it should be lessons. A lot of his learnings over the years
I'm pro learnings
from accidental discoveries while doing research. That accidental discovery used to be bundled with the final research report, but now the research report can be delivered a la carte. There is also a Ulysses bargain lens, whereby what people want for themselves in the moment is not what they want for themselves long term. And sometimes being forced to do something that we don't want to do in the moment, like asking a friend for a ride to the airport, is actually something that we do for ourselves long term, and we'll be glad that we did. There's also a bowling alone lens, which might argue that this trend has been going on for many decades, and tech is just a continuation of it. Ben, you often say with tech that there is no going backwards, we can only go forwards. So what is the way forward here? How can tech make us more connected instead of removing the friction of human interaction? All right, so we've hit the hour mark here. Do you have any quick thoughts for Mark?
Well, no, I had to interject when I did because the rest of this email is so spectacular. I didn't want to circle back and then complain about the front part. In that it's a wonderful articulation. And I really liked how Mark used the unbundling idea, how we've unbundled healthy human interaction from basic functionality like feeding ourselves. And it's 100% correct. And I agree with everything he said, except for his characterization of me in my position. Precisely because I agree with everything he said. It's a really great email. Just to jump to the end point, and I basically endorse almost everything that he said in here.
Yeah.
That's the problem. What do you actually do about it? What's the actual answer? And the one area where I would push back on him, again, with the caveat of just the dramatically unfair depiction of my position at the beginning.
You've raised these concerns on the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Past,
thank you. No,
I can confirm.
It's a brilliant email. That is the content. It really is. But how can tech make us more connected? It's not tech's responsibility. This is what tech does. It almost goes back to the LLM conversation where what's so interesting is the way to leverage LLMs is they don't have their own learning function. Maybe at some point they will, but the learning function is actually within humans. and you can get better experiences and use cases and outputs from an LM if you learn how to use them and you learn how to use them over time. That is our only hope writ large with technology.
Mhm.
I think the concern, I push back against regulations and stuff, that the absolute worst time for us to get locked into technology is technology circa 2020, where I think we're at the nadir, where people are starting to realize what a disaster things like open, like the feeds and Twitter and all that sort of thing actually are. And we have this group think that emerges, and this, massive partisanship, because you have this stark sort of friend enemy distinction, and people get herded into particular points of view. But what have I been very optimistic about? Things like group chats. I think group chats are incredible, and a new possibility of, but how does a group chat form? Like, that's always the hard thing. People will email us saying, you always talk about group chats. How do I make a group chat? What you don't do is ask Facebook to make an algorithm to create you a group chat, right? How do we know each other? Like, one of us took volition, probably me, because I'm very aggressive. I liked your podcast, and I reached out to you, and I'm like, oh, I think we met the first time in San Francisco, and I'm like, I'm going to be in town. You're recording this. Let's get lunch. And I met Sam S. Fandiari from Light Years at the same lunch. Like, and what I took the volition, I took the agency. If you squint, that's the same way you get leverage out of LLMs. You have to go and look for things for them to help you with, to go and do them. And what we need to figure out a way is, how can we embed this sort of agency and volition into more and more people, to realize all that tech is going to give you is this leveled slop. That, yes, it's leveled slop that is individualized to you, and to appreciate how, yes, you could do that your whole life, just play games and watch TikTok, and that is, even setting aside the possibility of AI replacing your job, that sounds like a horrible, miserable existence. When the Ulysses bargain sort of bit, where at every short-term moment you did what you want to do in the moment, you didn't do anything that was hard and bigger and larger. And how do you solve this? It's a cultural issue, but I do think there's much greater awareness, at least, of the problem. The first step to change is knowing that there's a problem.
The first step to change is this email from Mark,
Well, and the pushback on the email is
really clearly
not how can tech make us more connected. It's appreciating tech is not going to connect you.
Agreed.
It can facilitate connections that you create on your own, but every single person listening to this, and if you want to go to a TikTok sort of corner thing, the number one thing you can instill in your kids, and I don't know all the answers to how to do this, to be clear, but is agency and volition, and to pursue these connections, and appreciating that if you can get off the couch and do it, tech makes it more possible. You probably talked to me more than you've ever talked to one of your friends ever. We ended up working together, all downstream from getting over that initial hump to meet each other. And now we're sitting here on a podcast, like making fun of Mark and appreciating his great email.
Downstream of about 10,000 unsolicited texts about Giannis in 2017 and 2018.
But they were good texts because you didn't block me. So it's sufficiently insightful to be useful to your work.
Yeah, well, look, a couple thoughts. One, while I'm in Luddite mode, I would say an additional problem that I have with the tech economy is not related to isolation and loneliness, but that if all the margins and value ultimately accrue to aggregators, there's reduced incentive across the economy to produce quality products and quality work, and society as a whole just gets crappier. So that's been my soapbox for the last 2.5 years. That's what sometimes elicits the Luddite slur from you. Honestly,
the Luddite is just about you wearing wired AirPods or earpods.
That's right, on the other side of this video call, wearing them proudly. Don't worry. Mark should have titled this note, "Andrew is absolutely right about everything," because I agreed with everything he put forward. And I think the last part of the email, the bowling alone lens, where he talks about this trend has been going on for many decades and tech is just a continuation of it. I think that's a really important element of the email. Like these were trends that were set in motion a long time ago, and fostering community was a problem even before the internet arrived. I think de-emphasizing religion was a big part of when things started to change. And the solution isn't throttling innovation to try to reverse the trends. So now I'm stepping out of Luddite mode, but there's going to have to be like a recognition that this is a real problem society wide, and then B, you come up with pro-social solutions in tandem with an economic structure that is more efficient than what we had like 30 years ago, but also clearly has the potential to be antisocial. And AI could accelerate some of these trends and make it more urgent. And to your point, might be what breaks us out of the state that we've been stuck in for the last 10 or 15 years, which nobody is happy with. So
Yep.
that's
Well, I
the
mean,
case for going forward.
we're in the worst spot right now. There's a thing called Bomble's cost disease, which people, why is it technology makes stuff so much cheaper, other things get so much more expensive, like healthcare or education and stuff like that. And part of it is as the productivity of people in these technologically enabled industries increases dramatically, you have to compensate the other things that you want at a higher and higher level to make it worth doing. And this is framed as this real negative. Why don't we see the benefits of technology? Why is stuff getting more expensive even though we have these capabilities? There's a lens where this is actually a real positive. With technology, it has been dehumanizing. We've been making people into appendages of computers more and more. And AI is just finishing the job. It's like, let's go all the way to pure, just the computer does it all. And what do the humans do? Well, suddenly they do stuff that where differentiation is helpful, where being unique is compelling, where actually having the, again, this is a very sort of, it maybe almost sounds absurd, but imagine if we had a service economy and your little sort of store down the street selling knickknacks where there was yes, on one hand you have Amazon and cheap crap from China or whatever it might be. On the other hand, it's not just that you have an alternative, but the most capable people who would have been working in some computer denominated industry now have nothing better to do. And you have this bit where actually the quality of the bespoke content gets so much better and higher quality because that's where the talent starts to flow. You get sort of not just the flow of money goes to these unproductive sectors, but maybe the flow of human talent and creativity starts moving out of where it's been into these other experiences. And again, this is perhaps an overly optimistic view and vision of the world, but if AI actually does eliminate a lot of jobs and eliminates a lot of white collar jobs and people who have follow this default path of, they're very talented and they go and they study, they go to a good college and they go to a good job and then they spend their whole life sitting in front of a screen, suddenly they need to do something else with their life. Maybe they actually start doing stuff that makes the day-to-day experience more interesting and compelling. And it's not just that we step away from screens because computer took our jobs. We step away from screens because we realize what a boring, monotone existence it ended up being.
Yeah, or if drone delivery becomes so ubiquitous that you'd never have to leave your house for anything, then eventually you realize, oh, actually, it's still a good idea to leave my house, and let me come up with reasons.
Yeah, but there is this trusting on. I mean, but this is probably where it's sort of a fantastical vision that's maybe not realistic. Which there's so many things about the modern economy that accrue to you if you take agency and you go and do it. When people had to work for a job, go into a workplace and work for a job because their sustenance depended on it, you actually ran into people and you talked to them, right? There was a forcing function, right? And I think the fear, and a legitimate fear, is, do we have an agency gap that is going to become debilitating? And you're going to have people rotting away in their homes because their basic needs are met. And by basic needs, I mean not just like food and drink, but also the minimum viable entertainment options, scrolling TikTok endlessly or playing games or whatever it might be. That definitely doesn't sound ideal. So I don't
And
know.
it's
We're gonna
why
figure it out.
these problems are worth highlighting. So thank you, Mark. And then he also asked, how can tech make us more connected? So this final note is from Jeff. He says, hey guys, I had to share this.
Well, I already complained about the tech make us more connected. Okay, fine, good pivot here.
Jeff says, hey guys, I had to share this since you guys are always talking about touching grass. Here's an app called Touch Grass that's currently number 2 on Hacker News. It lets you set time limits on your apps, and once you've hit those limits, makes you take video proof of you actually touching grass in order to get more time with your apps. Thank you, Jeff, for making us aware of this app. You were the first person who emailed us. A few others highlighted this project.
And to be clear, you literally videotape yourself with hand on grass for your apps to work.
It's amazing. This is the
it's
app.
It's more treating people who live in cold climates like crap. Tech doesn't care about people that have snow. That's my complaint.
Well, and it did occur to me, you live in Taipei where there's less grass.
Not a lot of grass.
Northwest DC.
Yeah, that's true.
You're going to have your work cut out for you. But I signed up. This is the first step I've ever signed up as like a pre-download weeks before it's actually available. I will have a full review ready for the audience a week or so after the release of the Touch Grass app. So thank you, Jeff, and we can all look forward to that. But Ben, in the meantime, we can all look forward to coming back later in the week. I hope you have a great couple of days. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Nope.
Right. Grass,
go touch some grass. Go touch concrete jungle.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you later.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so I think you could maybe cut the English question.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to make it shorter, I'm not sure how much that tied in anything else. And also, I just think they would. Because I was in the context of criticizing listeners. That was the one question where it's like, sorry, you're just totally wrong. Up to you. I was just thinking.
I think your answer there was actually super interesting.
Okay.
Because the guy's thing sounds smart, and then you're like, actually, that ship might have sailed. So
the other thing is, I feel like texting Ben Golliver there and saying, Ben, I feel your pain. I could not believe you dropped the. He also said, how can tech make us more connected, when I just dropped a 5-minute rant about him saying how can tech make us more connected, and realizing that you had completely spaced out on the other side and had no idea. So
no, I knew what you said. I just wanted to make it really dumbed down. When you were talking about tech making us more connected, there are like 8 million threads.
No, I don't. I meant that as a joke. I'm not actually.
It was just a cheap segue to touch grass.